I'm recording my homily for the first Sunday of Lent in 2019. And I went south to visit with some of my brothers and sisters. Once a month we get together for lunch, and it's really nice that we're able to do that. And so I'm just on my way back. This is Gasworks Park in Seattle. I've never actually been here before, but I thought it was a good place to record my homily. So on Ash Wednesday, I think it was Ash Wednesday, I talked about balance. I want to talk about balance today in a particular way. Now, one of the things I talked about on Ash Wednesday was balance for us as Catholics and Christians is not about just standing in one place and being safe there, right? So this is my little comfort zone. This is where I'm good, and so I'm just going to stay here, right? That's not balance for Jesus. That's not balance for Christians, but rather it's holding things in tension. It's being able to stand there and to be able to navigate the things that life throws at us, or whatever's going on, and to hold it in tension and to be able to be that good person who can handle it, who can deal with it, right? And so when you see Jesus on the cross, you see that example of him holding things in tension. It's like when he's on the cross, it's like he's holding the world together, right? He's trying to. Now, what is he holding in tension? Well, I think there's a balance between war and peace. All right, so there's a balance between war and peace. Now, here's what I mean by that. So when Jesus is on the cross and he's standing there and he's up on the cross and he's holding the world in tension, is there a war going on? Well, absolutely. He's suffering. It's horrible. It's horrible what the world has inflicted upon him. And so what he's enduring in his body is dreadful. It's horrible, right? So there's definitely that ugliness of it. But is he at peace? Well, I think in his soul, he's deeply at peace because he's fighting the right battle. He's fighting the right war. And so when we fight the right war, we will achieve the right peace. But when we fight the wrong war, we're going to achieve the wrong peace. Now, Satan, so in the gospel this weekend, you have Jesus out in the desert, right? And so he's out there, he's fasting, but he's going out there and he's doing battle with Satan. And on Ash Wednesday, I said this, I said he goes out there and in some ways Jesus declares war on Satan. But he goes out there. Now, Satan's objective is to get Jesus off balance. Yes, his temptations are absurd, but perhaps his goals are much more subtle. And so as he presents these temptations to Jesus, in the subtleness, he wants to get Jesus off battle, so he fights the wrong war. So what does he tempt Jesus with? What is Jesus doing? He's fasting for 40 days, right? He hasn't eaten anything. He's hungry. And so Satan comes in almost like this truly compassionate person. He's like, Jesus, what are you doing? Why are you torturing yourself that way? You're God. You can turn that stone into bread. Why would you not do that? Why fast? In other words, he's saying is, why are you fighting this battle? Why are you training your body? Well, Jesus is there. It's like, well, I don't want to turn that stone into bread. And so in this moment of discipline, if he's going to turn anything to anything, he's going to turn the bread into his flesh and blood. He's going to feed his people. He's living for the sake of his people. And so he's in the desert not for himself. He's in the desert to begin this war. And Satan wants to get him off balance. And again, I want to point out that it sounds like Satan is so loving, so caring. It's like, Jesus, why are you why are you torturing yourself this way? But he doesn't care about Jesus at all. It's totally phony. It's totally false. And so the very nature of our battles that we fight Now, in the gospel book that we use, on the page next to where I was reading the gospel this weekend, there's a painting. And in the painting, you have Jesus, right? But then you also have Satan. And Satan in this painting is imaged almost like a gargoyle. You know what a gargoyle is, right? It's those ugly creatures that they look like fallen angels, but they're really, really ugly. Now, does Satan actually look like that? I don't think so, because I don't think he would get any followers if he actually looked that way, right? He tries to trick us. He tries to fool us, and so he will appear often as something kind and something good. But it doesn't take much. If the closer we are to God, the easier it is to say, that's not God. That's just something, that's something bad, right? But anyways, okay, I'm getting off track there. So the image is like this gargoyle, right? Well, where do we see gargoyles? Well, you see those statues of gargoyles in front of big mansions or old buildings, but also in front of Catholic churches, right? So you think of the really old Gothic Catholic churches, the ones that were built in the Middle Ages. They have all kinds of gnarly, ugly creatures on the front of the buildings. And so the big Gothic cathedrals on the front, the facade, they would have all these horrible looking scenes of gargoyles, of scenes of hell, people suffering. And you're like, why did they do that? Why did they put that on the front of the church, right? If they want to attract people to become Catholic, it's like, if any, put that on the back, right? So there's actually a reason behind it. So when they built the old Gothic cathedrals, they always built them facing a certain direction. So they were always facing east. So if you're standing inside the cathedral and you're in your pew and you're looking up at the priest, you're facing east. Now, they did that because at that time, they had this belief, or there was a symbol in the belief that Jesus was going to come back from the east, right? So in the parousia, the eschaton, so in the last days when Jesus comes back, he's coming back from the east. The sun rises in the east, right? And so the Son of God, coming back from the east. And so they always built their churches so that everybody who's at Mass would be ready. They would see him coming. A lot of symbolism in that, right? Well, the front of the church then faces west. And so the front of the church and facing west, it has lots of imagery of the things that we leave when we're entering the church. When we're heading east and we're going into the church, we're leaving behind. We're not leaving behind, but we're being able to be set free of all these battles, right? All the wars going on in our lives. And so the front of the church symbolizes all those difficulties and challenges that are there. And so then we enter into the church and we achieve a peace from being faithful. So we continued to head east through the battles, through the wars, and so we then go through the doors into the church. And the first thing that you'll see often in these Gothic cathedrals are the pillars that are wrapped with vines and plants and animals and all the things that you would think of the beauty of creation. But it's only just a fraction of the joy that you'll get once you step foot completely into this church building, because then you look up and you see the vastness of the heavens. You see the vastness of God's kingdom. And you're drawn into it. You're not scared of it. It's so magnificent, you're drawn to it. And so these cathedrals, these churches would have the symbolism of the battles being fought outside in our daily lives, whether they're battles outside of us or the battles within each of us. But then the peace that's achieved in fighting those battles and fighting the correct battles, the gargoyles that are in our life, right? What are the gargoyles in your life? So really what I want to focus today on is fighting the right battles. So I'm reading a book right now on Abraham Lincoln. It's called Team of Rivals. And so the Team of Rivals is when Abraham Lincoln was elected, he actually appoints to his cabinet all of the men who are running against him. And I should say when he's nominated for his party, he's eventually elected, he nominates for his cabinet, he picks the people who are running against him in his party. And so it's this team of rivals. Well, anyways, that's beside the point. But in the story, so this is taking place before the Civil War, obviously. This is before Abraham Lincoln's elected president of the United States. But it's really interesting, the dynamics of the politics of the times. I felt so ignorant of what actually was going on in the United States before the Civil War. You know, you kind of just think, oh, yeah, there's this issue of slavery, and then there was the war. But it's how the United States got to that point. And so you have the South in the United States, with regards to slavery, very, very, very protective of slavery. I mean, they truly were going to fight to the death over it. I mean, some people say that there was absolutely no alternative to that war, to the Civil War. They were going to fight to the death. There was no compromises that were good enough for them. So you have the South that's going to fight, and they'll fight dirty, they'll do whatever it takes, but they're going to protect the slavery for many different reasons, okay? And then you have the people in the North. Now, the people in the North, by and large, recognize the evil of slavery. They recognize the evil of what it does to humanity, of what it does when you rob people of freedom. What happens to humanity when we treat people so cruelly. And so, by and large, the sentiment of the North was to get rid of slavery, right? And it was pretty strong. But the politicians, many of them opposed it personally. But because of the benefits of slavery in the economy, right? It's like, well, yeah, we're opposed to it, but my company is, or our companies are really benefiting from it. So they would all kind of just say, yeah, we oppose it, but shh, just don't talk about it, right? Let's just make sure it doesn't spread any farther, but let's not stir the pot too much. We kind of hear that with politicians today on abortion, right? It's like, yeah, personally, I'm opposed to it. But then they go and vote in laws that are all for it. But then you had a couple of politicians of the time who just would not let it go from the North. And they kept pushing this thing, we have to get rid of slavery. Our country will die. It will die morally, it will die ethically, the soul of our country will die if we do not root out this evil. And they just kept pushing and pushing. And a lot of people were telling us, don't push, because one, you'll destroy your career, your political career. You know, if you push too hard, if you're too radical on this, you're going to destroy your career. And they would say, think of your family. Think of your family. You can hear Satan, can't you, right? It's like they're trying to take them off task, get them onto a different battle. They don't want them to fight that fight. Think of your family. Why are you fasting, Lord? Why do you need to fast? Turn that rock into bread. Come on. But they wouldn't give up. There was this one individual in particular who really did tank his political career. But you read what he wrote about it, and he said, but I did the right thing. I fought for those who were innocent. I fought for those who could not fight for themselves. I did what God would want me to do. And so he fought the right battle. And because of that, slowly but surely, because of that prodding and pushing, the issue came to the point where the people had to decide and say, are we going to allow this evil to thrive in our country? Are we going to allow Satan to control the direction of our country? Are we going to do what's right? Are we going to do what Jesus would want us to do? You have to remember, at the time, people were by and large very Christian. Just some other little more personal ways of looking at these battles that we have in our life. You know, I saw this study done a number of years ago. I was just reading about it a couple years ago, and it just came to my mind. It was done on soldiers, and soldiers who struggle with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And so when soldiers would come back from war, they were often struggling with trauma from what they had seen, what they had experienced. It was really horrible, and so you could see that in their behavior and their addictions they were forming, whatever it was, so there was that trauma. And they found that soldiers that had fought on foreign soil, so not on their own soil, had a certain level of PTSD, which was fairly high. But then soldiers that had fought on their own soil, so in other words, defending their own homes, their own cities, their own families, actually very rarely struggled with PTSD. Very rarely did they have trauma from what they went through. It's very interesting, isn't it? I think in some ways there's a little bit of a symbolism of what it means when we know we're fighting the right battle, we don't feel the trauma of it, at least as much. It was horrible, but if we're fighting the right battle, if we're doing it for the right reasons, if I'm fighting battles for love of my neighbor, for love of others, I'm not going to feel trauma for what I'm doing because I know I'm doing the right thing. But when we're somewhere else, we're not necessarily defending our families, we're not necessarily defending anything, right? Maybe we're the aggressors, whatever it is. There's something wrong, and there's trauma from that. So, as you know, I've been reading a book on anxiety. Anxiety can be caused by trauma, right? It's a really good book. I'm really enjoying it. So the book is called Unworried, A Life Without Anxiety. And it's by Dr. Gregory Papcock. You can get it on Amazon if you're interested in it. But in this book, there's this part where he uses an analogy to kind of get at the heart of this. And so he talks about somebody who's struggling with an addiction, right? So he just uses it as an example. Somebody struggling with an addiction. So let's say I have an addiction to donuts, right? So I have an addiction to donuts. And while I'm indulging in my addiction, now obviously I don't have an addiction. Well, I don't think I have an addiction to donuts, but besides the point, but whatever the addiction is, right? To our cell phones, to pornography, to drugs, alcohol, gambling, whatever it may be, they're all self-centered, right? They're all about me. And so these are escapes that we use to deal with sometimes our trauma, to deal with anxieties of life, whatever it is, okay? So while I'm indulging in this addiction, emotionally, I'm at peace. It's like, I like this, right? But spiritually, in the soul, I'm not at peace. Deep inside, I'm not at peace. Because I know I shouldn't be doing it. I know it's wrong. Whatever it is I'm doing, I know it's harmful. So let's say this person begins to fight the battle. They want to break the addiction. And so they start giving up, they start fasting, right? They start disciplining themselves to give up this addiction so that they can focus on the things that they should be focused on. Emotionally, they're in distress. They're gonna have desolation because they're wanting this thing, right? And so Satan's going to try and pull us into it and say, why are you fighting that battle? Come on, what's the big deal? It's not that, you're not hurting anybody, come on, right? But spiritually, we start to have peace. Deep in our souls, we start to have peace. Why? Because we know we're doing the right thing. We know that we're choosing to choose something that's healthy, that's good for us, whatever form that may take, but we know we're doing the right thing. But we have to fight the battle. Right? When Jesus was in the desert, did he have a battle? Yes. Did he have desolation because of the battle? Yes. He was hungry. He was fighting Satan, all those things. But did he have peace? Yes, because he's fighting the right battle. Satan wants to knock us off balance, right? Satan doesn't generally want us to just abandon the war. He generally doesn't want us to just completely turn our lives around and abandon God completely. But what he does is he does it very subtly by knocking us off balance. Maybe he knows our weakness. Maybe we're in a moment of weakness. Maybe we're under a lot of stress. Maybe whatever it is. So he knocks us off balance. So like in wrestling, no, I never did wrestling in high school. I would have died if I had. But I did do martial arts. And so in martial arts and in wrestling, one of the keys is to get your opponent off balance. Because when somebody's off balance, they have no strength. They have no leverage. They can't do anything. They're helpless when they're off balance. And so the objective is you get this person off balance, then you can win. And so Satan would try to do that to us. He just wants to get us off balance. And then we have no strength, and then he can take us down. Right? So a couple of things to think about during this Lent. Actually, I'd say one thing. One thing I want you to think about during this Lent is to make sure that you're fighting the right battle. What battles are you fighting? And then make sure that you're fighting the right ones. Now, I'm going to give you a little exercise to do that might be helpful. So you take a piece of paper, right, and you make 4 columns. In the first column, you'll just title it physical, okay? And then you have emotional, and then you have mental, and then you have spiritual. All right, these are traditionally the 4 areas of our life, right? Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. Now, in the physical column, I want you to put down all the physical battles that you're fighting. So physically, what are you fighting with? Well, internally, you might have back problems, you might have diabetes, you might be struggling with something really serious, whatever it may be. But physically, put down the battles that you're fighting and think about it a little bit deeper than just that. But think about the physical aspects of the battles that you're fighting. Okay? All right. Maybe on some level, discipline of doing, getting exercise, right? Getting enough sleep, whatever those physical battles are. Okay. And then emotional, write down the battles that you're fighting emotionally. What battles are you fighting emotionally? So, for example, it's a float plane. So you're fighting the battles of stress, maybe anxiety, maybe there's emotional battles of being disconnected with your spouse. You're struggling right now, so there's kind of that loneliness, right? Maybe you're single and you're just struggling with loneliness in this particular time in your life. What are those emotional things, the battles that you're fighting, right? Maybe there's addictions. Maybe there's things going on there, right? Addictions can kind of fall in the physical as well, kind of jointly there. But write down all the battles that you're fighting. And spend time, go into the church and prayerfully bring your list into the church and sit with Jesus. And then just start writing them down. Spend some time with it. Okay? And then the mental battles that you're fighting. So these are the things that you think about, the things that you, these are not necessarily things that you worry about, but things that you think about. Maybe it's your hopes, your dreams, desires, it's your just ideas on things. What are things how are they impacting your life, your plans, all those things. Things that your mind gets wrapped up with. What are the things that you're thinking about? What are those battles, okay? So an example is, should I leave my job? Should I stay at my job? Well, I'm thinking about that a lot. And I know that also kind of overlaps into the emotional part, but it's the thing, what are you thinking about? What are those battles that you're fighting? Okay? And then the last one is the spiritual. What are the spiritual battles you're fighting? See, when my prayer is really dry, when I pray, I feel like I'm just talking to a wall. I feel like there's just emptiness, just darkness, right? That would be a spiritual battle. And so you put that down. I'm afraid to go to confession. Put it down. I don't know what my sins are. I think about it, but I don't really know what my sins are. I don't feel anything when I think about my sins. And so I feel like when I go to confession, it's kind of empty. Put it down. Put that spiritual battle down. Okay, now that you have all your battles laid out, you take this piece of paper and you can wrap it up, roll it up, whatever you want. And then figuratively, or maybe literally, but figuratively, you place it at the feet of Jesus. And so this Lent is not 40 days of you trying to solve all your battles. It's not doing that. But it's first surrendering them all over to Jesus. Because Jesus is going to be the one that's going to help you fight the right ones. He's going to help you prioritize them. He's going to help you come and have insights and say, you know what, that was really silly. That was just about my pride. You see how Satan kind of wanted to get Jesus stuck on his pride, He was appealing to his pride on some of the temptations. Now, I don't want to go through the other temptations yet because I think I'm going to preach on them in the coming weeks. But But you know how he's trying to get him off balance. And so you surrender those battles over to Jesus, and Jesus then helps you to see with clarity what you should be fighting. And then once that happens, then you can achieve the peace that comes from fighting the right wars, the right battles in life. Does that make sense? All right, good. All right, well, God bless you, and I will see you next week. Take care.